Welcome to the Catholic Dadcast by Rich Pintang, where we break down all things dad from a Catholic perspective. Now more than ever, we need dads to step up their game. Gentlemen, buckle up and get ready for battle. Brothers and sisters, welcome to Season 2 of the Catholic Dadcast. I am Rich Pintang, your host and founder, and praise God, we've made it to Season 2. I'm pleased and honored to be able to have this conversation with my guest on a serious subject that I hope is going to be valuable and inspirational to the viewers and listeners alike. And he is a deacon at St. Bonaventure Parish in Huntington Beach. He's been happily married to his beautiful bride, Barbara, of 47 years, praise God. He is the oldest of 13 kids. My goodness, that's a feat in itself. And he's here to talk to us about the aspects of human trafficking. So welcome to the show, Deacon Joe Sullivan.
Thank you for having me.
It's pleasing to me to see that there are courageous men out there that can speak on a subject that can be very uncomfortable for many. But to me, I believe that having a chance to have this conversation is going to allow us to really see that the darkness in the world, regardless of living in beautiful Orange County, it's here, it's around us, and Catholic men and really all men of faith really need to stand up to these types of injustices. So, you know, Deacon Joe, if you could maybe share with us, how you went from a professional life to your calling, into the diaconate.
Okay, I was a high school teacher for a couple of years, but I spent most of my career in the oil and gas industry, chemical industry, working as a technical consultant and then a customer service person. So I interacted with a lot of people. I enjoyed it. But as I'm also at the same time at my church, I was getting invited to do things. Hey, why don't you could be a lector, right? You want to try that? And how about a Eucharistic minister? And each step I took I enjoyed it. I wanted to do more, and raising a family at the same time. We're trying to support the kids in sports and things. And I really liked coaching. I liked teaching to some extent, but I just kind of kept moving farther and farther toward serving in the church until at some point, I get invited to consider the diaconate. And diaconate is, as a deacon, we're ordained, we're configured to Christ the servant. We're supposed to go serve the altars, serve the Word of God, and serve the needs of the community, serve the service of charity. And so we start learning about all the places where there's injustices, people falling through the cracks. We spend some time in jail ministry and hospital ministry, but then eventually we're what are we passionate about? And when I get assigned to St. Bonaventure, the pastor wants to know where I really want to work. And I told him I have a heart for respect, life, and justice and peace. What do you think? He says, I'd rather you started with justice and peace. So that's where we started, but it's still always learning. Where in Orange County have we got this problem or that problem? And in the parish, I started this, let's have a justice and peace effort. And we surveyed the people and said, what are the top issues for you? And homelessness was number one, which I think it still is in Orange County. It's a big issue. We see it all the time. And hunger and life issues, those were the top three. But kind of behind that a little ways was human trafficking. And I got more involved with that, but most people still don't think that, what's that got to do with Orange County, So that's where I've been learning and trying to share Orange County is a demand center. There's money in Orange County. It brings the victims. So anyway, that's I
Yeah.
wandered through where I got started and where I ended up, and now I'm passionate about trying to do something about trafficking. So
Yeah. And then, and praise God for that, because it's the call to serve is it can be somewhat ignored, and the self-critical selves of ourselves can kind of say, no, that's not what I want to do. And but really it ends up being, what does God want me to do? Like, what is his
yeah,
will for me at this time, right?
yeah,
And it's amazing how that when it's your time, you know it's your time.
right.
And to know that you know that. And that's, I think that's what draws me to this particular subject, is that it fascinates me that human trafficking is so lucrative and has grown to be so problematic, but all the aspects of the root causes of it can just branch off into so many different directions.
Yep.
And like you said, I think the misnomer is, what does that have to do with me in, beautiful Anaheim, or
Yep.
wherever we live here in Orange County? But the fact is, it's the consumer that drives the demand. And that's, I think, what saddens me is, um, if you start to break out into uh, the poor teachings of sexuality and respect for the body, and all those different aspects, you can really go deep. And that's why it's so problematic, is it continually happens. And I mean, for you, Deacon Joe, I mean, in your opinion, why do you think there isn't as much emphasis on human trafficking, whether it's media publicity, or it happens to be ministry work?
Well, I think that there's big justice issues facing. We can see them. It's like seeing homeless people, or seeing, abortion clinics in your neighborhood, and you know what's happening and where it's happening. And the issue with human trafficking, generally speaking, is it's fairly well hidden, or we don't notice it. Somebody could be just they come to the U.S. on a work visa. They've been promised a good job somewhere, and then when they get into that job, somebody takes their ID and keeps them in the house, and they never get out, and they're a slave in the house, but nobody even knows it because they don't see them. And that labor trafficking is a problem, but much bigger, of course, is sex trafficking, and that's and it's changing kind of rapidly as to why it occurs and where it occurs, even in our area. It used to be, you'd see uh, streetwalkers, somebody obviously in the business of providing sex for money, and the community is what law enforcement responds to. The community would say, hey, clean that up. But that's not where it happens anymore. It's in, upscale hotel rooms in Huntington Beach and Irvine, and massage parlors here and there, and it's happening all over the place, but still out of the public's view. And there's myths that are perpetuated, like, well, the girls involved in that, they're old enough, it's their decision, they get the money. Pretty much none of those are going to be the case. It's very, very often the case that girls underage, she doesn't get any of the money, and she's a slave. It's not her choice at all. Once she's trapped, it's just a really miserable life. And I think our Catholic bishops put a report out a couple years ago that said, the lifespan of a woman once she's involved with being trafficked, which usually starts at about 13 years old, 7 years. That's the average lifespan. So it's like shocking, but there's always the guys, the traffickers are willing to bring more. They Girl dies, don't matter to them. They bring another one. So you might get into, well, wait, why is this even happening? What is one of the talks I usually give are on ending the demand, being aware of, hey guys,
Yes.
it's
Amen.
us demanding the service, paying for sex from somebody. That's crazy, but that's what causes it to happen. And one of the big drivers for that is pornography. And man, I don't know, why don't I go to pornography?
It,
When
it
I
go,
was a kid,
Mhm.
long time ago when I was in college or whatever, we knew pornography wasn't a good thing, but it's not like it is today. It's not available like it is today. And we
Yep.
didn't know what the problem really was. We can tell you right now, kids who see that stuff are dramatically impacted, brain rewired. I mean, it's it is damaging the one who sees it. And that's what causes people to go be willing to buy sex from somebody, from a girl that can't say no, it's because they've been watching this stuff. And that's just a huge, I mean, that's so different than it was even 10 years ago. And the ages of exposure of kids to it is dropping all the time. It used to be 11 was the average first exposure average. Now it's down to about, wait a minute, 10-year-old. That's a fifth grader, right? Fourth grader.
It is, and that's what scares me is that my son is 11, and uprooting him in understanding the beauty of the body and not to be ashamed of it because we were created in God's image, but at the same time they're being preyed on at a young
Yeah.
age because that's a customer. And
Yep.
in fact, Deacon Joe, one of the things that one of the words you used was slavery. It really is modern day slavery, and then on top of that, even I'm in a dad's mastermind, for fathers that are trying to do better for their lives, and trying to build something very special as far as their legacy is concerned. And these
Right.
are men that are in their adult age, saying that this is how it's affected them because
Right.
they were exposed to it at such a young age, where we grew up where it was a dirty magazine that my older brothers had, for example, that we got our hands on. Now it's at the click of a button, and that's
Yeah.
scary because that's exactly why we say that technology can be a great thing, but it's the fact that there's more consumers and they feel the demand, and the earlier we can get them, the
Yeah.
longer we can keep that revenue going, and it's continual, and that's the sad thing. From what I was hoping that you could share with us, Deacon Joe, is um, really the different aspects of human trafficking and how that relates to the sex trafficking compared to labor trafficking. But one of the things I wanted to share was in the catechism, and it's 24:14, and it reads, "The seventh commandment forbids acts or enterprises that, for any reason, selfish or ideological, commercial or totalitarian, lead to the enslavement of human beings, to their being bought, sold, and exchanged like merchandise in disregard for their personal dignity. It is a
Right.
sin against the dignity of a person and their fundamental rights to reduce them by violence to their productive value or to a source of profit." And I think I want to share that because it was, quite frankly, it shook me up quite a bit to have to prepare for this conversation.
Yeah.
So for me to spend that time and for you to be doing it as a ministry, there's so many aspects of human trafficking that lead to so many other things. So
Hmm.
I'm going to hand it off to you, Deacon
Yeah.
Joe.
Yeah. So sorry, my mind is jumping here, but one of the things we realize as you get um, into how does this happen and how does it snare its victims, um, they are typically somebody who is looking for help, looking for love, maybe, but looking for a responsible adult in their life to take care of them. And so um, kids in the foster care system are great targets for the traffickers because they say, hey, I'll take care of you, and I feed you, I give you things, and then I start taking away things if you don't do what I say. And it doesn't take long before they're in a really bad relationship. But any so we typically in law enforcement and the trafficking task forces we were trying to make sure that the parents realized that their kids were potential, and there was potential for them getting tricked into something, and then they couldn't get away or they were extorted, It's like sexting, just send me a picture of yourself, and then now I need more, or I'm going to reveal it, and the kid is trapped, and they don't talk to the people who really care about them and could guide them, and they're under somebody's influence. And the more they comply, the worse the things are that they have done that they can be used against them now, something like that. So to an extent, we used to warn parents about, that there's predators online that are in the chat rooms and playing the video games with your kids. They pretend to be kids. They're just trying to make friends so that you trust them, and then they're going to suggest things. And so one great thing as a parent is try to help your kids understand what a healthy relationship is, and what is appropriate to respond to, and ooh, that's not a good thing to respond to. And then the kid is much more, they're better defended against it. But we realize, like in Orange County, our kids have people that care for them. There's no there's not much doubt that they have many things. They're not out there looking for something, but they actually believe good things are going to fall into their lap, and so they don't question when they say, "Oh, you've won this." There's up in Northern California, Sacramento, I think there was a travel agent who had two girls, 15, 17, come up to the counter with their first class one-way tickets to New York, and said, "I just don't feel good about this." And they call law enforcement, and sure enough, the girls met some guy online. He was going to use them in music videos and one-way tickets to New York. And the law enforcement guys say, I don't think that was what was going to happen when you got there. Oh, we wouldn't do anything we didn't want to. I don't think you would have had a choice. And the girls finally realize it. So they contact the parents, who think they're at a sleepover somewhere. That would have been the last time they were seen, and it's because they believe that it's like, we need to teach our kids, you be responsible, you work for things. Anybody says, don't tell your mom till we got it, tell your mom right away, that kind of thing. Is this kind of it's always changing how the traffickers are going to try to trick somebody into getting them under their control. And we talked a little about pornography. That is a primary one right there. Again, they're just looking for the little minds that they can suck in. And so we just talk a little about, how parents handle pornography, but the victims are anybody that a trafficker can get under their control. They could be a nice kid who still goes to school every day and is getting out at night and being used. It's kind of amazing once they've got influence over you. Used to be it was poverty only. If you're poor, you gave it a try because you didn't have much else to do. And if they caught you, that's a sad thing. That's what poverty does. Not really the case anymore. It's more like anybody who's watching videos, anything, is a potential victim. So the parents need to educate their kids. Yeah, that's basically it. And it's educate them on proper relationships. And oh boy, we had our Catholic school here had the guy who does internet safety come in to talk to the parents of the 7th and 8th graders, just so and he told them, look at your children's phones. You must look at their phones. And the next day, the principal was getting all these emails about parents who were horrified at what the kids were saying they were going to do to each other. They're texting each other, I'm going to do this to you. Obviously, they're watching pornography, or they never would even thought of that kind of thing. And it's like, there's no place where the kids are safe from it unless their parents help them make decisions on how to be safe from it. And let me throw another thing out. Your children are going to probably encounter pornography at some point. It's almost impossible to keep them from at least being exposed to it. But if they know, oh, that's not a good thing, I don't want to look at that, it hurts my mind, it damages me, they'll be good. But if they got into it for a while and then they're ashamed, it's like the parents need to understand that the kids almost can't help themselves once they get into it. So to be merciful, be understanding, and help them find programs that'll help them get out of it. Same thing for us adults. If the guy's been watching pornography and he wants to quit, there's a bunch of programs that'll help you get out of it if you just will work with it. and then you find your kids are much more relaxed at home because you didn't realize it, but you were acting different if you were watching that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Like you said about the dignity of a person, you start to think of people as objects to be used instead of treasures to be, served, that kind of thing. And so anyhow, the pornography thing is just every day it gets a little more dangerous. It's, there's anime versions now to suck the kids in young. And anyway, I was
And
I got asked to be, there's a fifth grade at our school where the boys were so rowdy that the two female teachers asked, could you come in and help with our family life? You know, talking about sex to the fifth graders. And so I worked with them for the course of that. I didn't realize it until later, even that, and a little dude comes up and goes, I need to go to confession. I've been doing something on my computer. Didn't even occur to me that's what he was talking about. I was thinking, he's probably playing video games when he's not supposed to. But the way the things they thought happened. I mean, the kids that age, if somebody will show them what sex is about, they're interested.
mhm.
How does this really work? Mom and dad aren't telling me, so I'm going to go watch it. And then you realize, they don't even realize that's not healthy. That's not good. That's not loving. That's violent and abusive. But they think that's how it works. So, you get a lot of young people. Billie Eilish came out the other day and said, I watched pornography when I was 11 years old, and it messed my mind up. It wrecked me. Does it to every kid. So
Yeah,
anyhow,
yeah, and going back to the root cause, right? Deacon Joe, is the fact that we have to be vigilant within our homes, in that aspect, because that it's the perverseness that and the father of lies that wants to confuse you and cause chaos, and that's why, like myself as a father, I want to make sure that I'm putting guardrails around. And there's even in our dad's group that we talked with today, we talked about an app called Bark that just will signal us as dads that this is what's going on. This is something that you should be aware of that's being exchanged. And you think, gosh, I didn't think Joey and Steven spoke like that.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and you become desensitized to that language or that behavior, and then that's when slowly but surely they sneak in there, and that's up to us. But just like you said, if we can go to the root cause and cut down in the customer demand, then the supply will also have to go with that.
right, right. Yeah, we can. That's kind of there. As long as there's demand, there will be victims supplied. So we care for the victims. We try to, you know, provide services through survivor organizations, and we try to help with foster care, either being a court advocate or a foster parent. We do what we can for the victims and potential victims. But you're right. In the end, it's like we got to step up as men and see what we can do to help our friends understand that this isn't good, and it's hurting you and them and your family, and that there's help too. That, like you talking about dad's groups get together, and somebody will eventually say, yeah man, I got a problem with this, and there's
Mhm.
help. And it really helps if there's other guys who will walk with them through it and be encouraging, and coworkers. You can say, dude, you aware what that does to you as a person? I mean, there's a reason that we have a big increase of ED for men under 40. It's because they're
Mhm.
watching that stuff, and they can't have a relationship with a real woman anymore,
Hundred
that kind
percent,
of thing.
100%. That's actually what the post was about, was because he was introduced to it at such a young age that he's checking his testosterone level now. He feels like he can't be intimate with his wife, and same like you said, early 40s, and that's not normal. And so what happens? We want to go to medication. So
Yeah.
big pharma scores
Oh, they
off of
love
that,
that.
right? It's
Yeah.
another customer, and that's a whole different thing. But I
Yeah.
mean, when you have a chance to talk to to different parishes and groups, you have a very systematic way of approaching it. So I mean, what are some of the ways that we can, as men, relate to really the gravity of where do we even start and what do we look at? Because obviously the statistics are what they are.
Yeah, and both the man and the victims come from all across the spectrum, and it isn't rich and poor anymore, or anything like that. Yeah, the hardest thing when we talk to a group of men, let's say typically men, and they say, "Oh man, we got to do something about this." It's hard to figure out what to do. Again, you could try to support a survivor organization, work with foster kids, but mostly it comes down to helping your children and their friends, because your kids will be witnesses to the right way to do this. They'll say, "That's not good. Don't show that to me, and you shouldn't be looking at it either." The kids will be straight up with their friends as long as they know that it really damages them, the pornography or whatever. And, so we teach our children. So I'm going to say, as parents, you go to your school and you say, "We need education for the kids on predators online and also sexuality." Um, there's little books even for the fourth graders or second graders. Good pictures, bad pictures. Let's at least have the conversation with the kids so that they feel empowered to say, "Oh, hang on, I don't want to look at that. That's not good. I got to go tell my mom." That's going to keep them safe. But it usually means there's so much else the school's got to work with, so much else the family's trying to work with. That kind of stuff just kind of it gets left out. It's like it's too much too much to do, but go and tell your school we've got to do this for our kids. And that kind of thing will really help. It'll grow. I mean, I'm very hopeful, inspired by all the programs that are coming out. But if we spread the news, we can help each other, we can walk together and lift each other out of this kind of thing. And just speak when you see it's not right. You speak. Whether it's just to your friends or just to yourself, even to speak. So
Yeah.
that's the main thing. And there's law enforcement and legislative aspects. I mean, if you want to get involved, you can learn legislatively the things that are going on that make it worse, and the things that are going on that will make it better. Um, because there's still efforts nowadays, always, there's efforts to decriminalize prostitution, again, with the idea that the women are choosing this, something like that, um, to stop them being able to arrest people for loitering. It's the only way to get to the trafficker, to the pimp, is if you can take the girl off the street and talk to her. And so law enforcement needs our help too with laws. So be aware, just be aware that there's things that go on in Sacramento that can help or hurt this situation. And join a group in your area. There's all kinds of little anti-trafficking efforts at parishes and things, so that you can learn about that and say, "Okay, what can I do?" Well, when it's time to write something, your legislator will let you know. Our survivors need a truck to move some stuff here and there. You can help with that. And for sure, we got to get to our schools and anybody teaching our kids or watching over our kids. The neighbors. Don't let your kid be over there if the other kid's got a phone and no limits on it. Bring them
Yeah.
over to our house.
Yeah.
And
And those are the things to look at, like you said, Deacon Joe, because for me, the way I would approach it is let me start here in my home.
yeah,
And then, like you said, the school, the community. And because really, I mean, I think there's a lot of us that think that this doesn't affect us in our community, but in reality it does, because where's the money? There's money here in Orange County. There's no way that you can't say there is. And the fact is that they're going to continue to prey on a younger generation. And obviously, where we are with regards to respect for the family and sexuality and morality in general, we've gone so far away that we it's been said we're living in a godless society, and we are. And
yeah,
this is not like it happened overnight. This is generations and generations. So if it's going to start somewhere, it's it's our children. And that's why really I've invested a lot into just being very upfront with the the how this can negatively um, this is not something you want to take into to the pearly gates when you're being
yeah,
judged. And
yeah,
part of that is just allowing yourself to just like I said, be courageous, to work with the not only with those that are really trying to put an end to it, but also to be informed, to be vigilant, and to work with the organizations that are treating and rehabilitating those that are still going through the trauma of being a victim in
Hmm.
trafficking.
Yeah. And the good news is God's got a plan for marriage and family and everything else, sexuality, and it's a good one. And we need to be confident that, teaching our children and you grow as spouses, include growing in the way God wants you to do things, and your family will be blessed. And then you'll bless your neighbors and the kids, their friends at school and all that kind of thing. It's not something to be afraid of, but to just say, we do have work to do, and let's go out there and do it.
But your point is correct, Deacon Joe's. Because really, like there's still another aspect that I really haven't even touched on, and I know this can go another direction, but I have to mention that for those that are involved in this, whether you're a consumer, you've partook in it, it's related to the pornography side of it, they have to realize that these women that are objectified, go through such trauma, and the fact that the other aspect of it is when and if they become impregnated for some reason, guess who that's feeding? That's feeding the abortion industry,
Yep.
and that's several times, especially just looking at the sheer number of men that have to be accommodated for as far as their quote customer base. And it really disgusts me to know that that's just something that we as God's people cannot be a part of. And if you're going to fight anything that you feel is a noble cause, this is one of them.
So let me just comment that the abortion industry aids and abets trafficking by, not notifying parents, by doing an abortion even though she looks underage, but she says she's 18. You don't um, they allow it to, they give the girl right back to the trafficker, because he brings her and he takes her away. And you know um, those things all work together, and they drag people down. And you're right, it's a shame. And that's something we try to do something about legislatively. We try to do it with prayer. We got to trust God is going to respond to our prayers too. But you're right. It's not, those are not separate things. Those are all part of that same disrespect for the girl, the child. It's just, I don't want to pay. She's going to pay. I don't care about her. And it's a really culturally really a sad thing that so
Hmm.
people are so discounted as
It's
far as their dignity goes. Yeah.
in fact that's I think that's what makes it even more disgusting is the fact that it's become so lucrative because with, for example, drug trafficking, it's a one-time thing, but a human can be used on a long-term basis and multiple times, and before by the time they're done with that particular quote product, there's another another set of victims, and it's just sad, really, to see why the somehow God has to be merciful in in this whole situation.
Yeah.
But really, that's our responsibility as God's people to be merciful, to pray for all those that are involved in this, because unfortunately there are some that just don't have, because they prey on the vulnerable. Unfortunately, they feel like this is their only way to
Right.
make ends meet. They're being manipulated. They ran away and now they're running from fear. I mean,
Right.
there's so many aspects of it.
Right. And you were talking about our responsibility. The pimps uh, teach each other. They have websites. They're teaching each other how to victimize people. We can teach each other how to protect victims and take care of our children. And there's organizations where let's join one and see how we can work together on it. And anyway, yeah.
Well,
Don't be afraid.
and before we start wrapping up, Deacon Joe, I think there's so many different aspects of it, and for those of you, obviously, I would love for you to share some final thoughts on things that we can do in terms of prevention and awareness and such. But for those of you that do want to get in touch with Deacon Joe, if indeed he has the availability to speak to your parish or school or your ministry group, we'll make sure that we have information in the show notes. Um, you know, we'll have resources there, between ochumantrafficking.com and humantraffickinghotline.org. And these are the ways to really just educate yourself and don't go under the belief that this doesn't affect us, because this is a society that we're fighting for. Because if we're not fighting for them, who is? And these are all, still children of God, and there's so much healing that can be restored through the support. But Deacon Joe, I mean, I'd love for you to offer up some final thoughts on anything pertaining to the topic.
Well, what I guess what I want to be sure and say is that we need to be patient as we try to do something to help. So we have to pray and see what actions we can take, and if we're not getting very far in that direction, keep keep bringing it back to God and the Spirit and try some other things. It's often the case we'll start an organization, let's say in a parish, and then we don't have anything to do for a while and people drift away. Don't give up, continue to say, God, help me to figure out a way to help, and pray about it. Consider there's many different aspects you could be involved with. It could be as simple as the you know fair trade coffee or something, which helps with the labor trafficking overseas, or it could be working through your school, or having marches, having just events to raise people's awareness. It doesn't matter. If you want to get involved, you will find ways to help, but don't be discouraged by how slow it goes and the fact that it continues to be a problem. We just need to be trusting and be prayerful and be patient, and don't be afraid and don't give up. Just keep working on it. Hope
Well,
that helps.
well, thank you, Deacon Joe, and I mean, like I said, praise God that there are those of us that really want to bring attention to such a heinous crime, and for it to grow to be and to what it is, we have to put an end to it, and it has to start somewhere. So I I wouldn't doubt that that we can draw more attention to fighting human trafficking. And I mean, overall, we want to make sure that our audience knows that, you know, um, if you feel called and you can gather one or two folks, within your community to do something like this, we'd love to see more representation at the parishes that are representing human the aspects of human trafficking and how we can combat that. Because, like we've discussed here on the podcast, there's so many aspects that have to be addressed. And by all means, Deacon Joe, hopefully we get a chance to do something like this again, because it's been a powerful conversation we were able to have here. And um, outside of that, I will certainly pray for you and your family and everything that you do. And we always pray for all of our listeners and viewers, and even if it just happens to be one or two hearts that we touch, then we've created that ripple, like we say.
That's right.
So thank you
One
again for
soul
being
at a
here.
time. You're welcome. Thanks for letting me be part of it.
So, brothers and sisters, this podcast episode has ended. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Amen.